Bulldogs defeat the Sharks 15-14. Bulldogs had a 92% possession of the ball in the opening 20 minutes. It was an absolutely incredible performance from the Bulldogs. Not in regards to, like, did I watch that and go, wow, I haven't seen this from the Bulldogs before, but just their ability to hang in there and get the win in the end when it looked like the Sharks. There were periods there where I felt like, oh, Sharks probably got just a little bit too much class. Yes, did the Bulldogs get some 50-50 calls in the last 10 minutes? Yeah, for sure. I'm not going to deny that. But you've got to be in the game. You've got to put yourself in a position to be able to win the game. And I feel like an idiot because each week I watch the Bulldogs and I'm just waiting for them to have that game where I go, okay, reality has set in here. Reality has set in. And each week they prove me wrong. Each week they go out there, they get the job done, and they don't just get it done in a way where they're throwing the ball around and things certain kind of like fall into place. It is all off the back of their defence and their systems. An absolutely incredible win for the Bulldogs.
Yeah, very impressive, mate. And I'm sort of the same. Like, are we all Canterbury's a top 8 side this year? Are we
I'm convinced, yeah.
I'm convinced as well. Yeah.
Saying that they will make the 8?
Yeah.
I'm 50-50. Like, they're every bit in the hunt. There's a long way to go.
If you had to predict your 8 right now, would they be in it?
I haven't looked at the ladder. I'm on the spot. What are they on? Fifth. 20 points. A point clear of 9th, though. They've got a bye to come.
But like the best defensive side in the competition is not named Penrith at the moment. That'll take you a long way.
It's more around, it's not necessarily around where they are on the ladder right now, which is 5th, which is great. Yeah. It's just the style of footy they're playing.
Yeah. No, they're absolutely like capable of being a top 8 team. It's just, geez, it's tight having a look at it.
It's so tight.
There's 2 points between 5th and 12th. There's 4 points between 5th and 14th.
And when you have a look at, the 4 teams just out of the 8, Manly, Brisbane, Newcastle, Raiders, Turbo walks back in, Reece Walsh walks back in, Ponga walks back in, and Jamal Fogarty walks back into the Raiders, which is going to be very important for them. It's going to be a wild run home.
Their defence. Their defence is what convinces me that if I was to predict a top 8 right now with what the information we have, I think they squeeze in. And it's all reliant on their defence. Their ability to just hold teams out and just hang in it, stay in the game. It's incredible.
And that's the big thing for me that sort of I feel confident in saying they will be a top 8 side because it's not like they're a team running around with a hot hand like the Sharks get sometimes. You're like, okay, they could lose that. It's just their attitude, even when they've got guys out or whatever it is, or guys have to play different positions, they all just show a jersey every single week.
Well, they're not actually playing that well in attack. Like, I don't watch them in attack and go, holy shit, this is incredible. It's just genuinely wherever someone lands in that lineup or wherever they land on the field during that time, they do a job.
And the other thing is, like, you sit there and say, Campy, I think everyone's been guilty as well of waiting for that game where they fall off the perch and have the reality check. And it's like, how many games do these blokes need to win before we sit there and go, no, they're the real deal and they're top 8 contenders and a finals footy team. They're a new team with new combinations. So in one sense, you sit there, when are they going to fall off? In another sense, you go, these combinations are only going to get better and better because they're very new. Yep. So while other teams may have been around together for a lot longer and, are relatively capped on what they can do, I think the Doggies, they're clearly a team on the up. So why can't they get even better?
Mate, it's just, if they finished 10th or 11th, I would have said they would probably consider that a successful year. And they may still finish 10th or 11th. It's a very close season at the moment. If they finish in the top 6, I reckon they're nearly 2 years ahead of schedule. Like, seriously, nearly 2 years ahead of schedule with where they're at.
I had a really good think about this and chat with a few people over the weekend, but it's just around Cameron Ciraldo and looking back on last season where it was a disappointing season for the Doggies and Ciraldo came from the Panthers with all this hype and it was underwhelming. Any other year, I think people sit there and go, he's coming to a club, he's inherited a roster that he didn't put together, a club that had been battling for a long time, the best part of a decade, and they were struggling. So, you cut him some slack. Because Andrew Webster had left from the Doggies as well as an assistant coach and gone to the Warriors and killed it, I think there was probably unfair comparisons. And because Webster had this unbelievable year with the Warriors, with, on paper, a better squad at the time, what Ciraldo did at the Doggies was, it was a bit maligned and all that, but you look at it now and go, 2 years in, which, as you said, Campy, they're well ahead of schedule on what they're trying to do, especially if they play finals footy. But his blueprints are all over the team now. He's had time to work with them. He's getting the team that he wants. He's cleared out players that he doesn't want. So you can't help but just praise what he's doing there and just the club in general.
Yeah, and I mean, I'll be the first to put my hand up. I compared them. I compared what Webster was doing at Serraldo, and I looked at, okay, so it's incredible what Webster's been able to do in regards to keep the roster that was essentially already there. He made some changes and get the best out of what was already there. Whereas Serraldo, I never knocked, I'm the guy that was sitting here saying, friggin' stay patient every week, getting smashed for it. Never knocked the way he did it, but I did comment on it was a very different approach to Webster. Now, granted, the third year is probably where you'll get your best answer because each person can have one good year, and then the third year is going to be like, well, who really lands on their feet? But at the moment, with where the Bulldogs are, Serraldo took that early pain to rebuild, and as you said, like every player in there now is a player that he wanted there, but also his DNA is all over the way they play. And so maybe he did take that early, tough 12 months. And Gus Gould has actually come out last year and said that he told him not to come to the club this early. He said to wait one more year and come a year after. And Serraldo said, no, I want to get in there and do it now. And it seems like a genius move. So, yeah, you've got to praise his patience. Like, the amount of people, like, throughout the whole year last year, I was saying stay patient. Like, just stay patient, guys. He's going to need time to build this roster together. But even I was towards the back end of the season when they had a record defensive, like, worst defense in the club's history, essentially, or one of, even I was sitting there going, shit, maybe this system that he has just doesn't work at another club. And I wasn't saying whether it did or it didn't, but I was beginning to question. Whereas for the first 20 rounds or whatever it was, I was going, no, just stay patient. It's the first year. It's paying off big time. Because I don't care what anyone says. This team on paper shouldn't be sitting fifth in the competition, and they are. Why? Because they work for each other, and they've got a good culture built in at that club.
It's brilliant. And all good points. And you look at it, again, back to finals prospects this season, because they've gone so heavy on utility players, the longer this season goes, the more season-ending injuries are going to be. There's going to impact teams. There'll be suspensions. All sorts of things are going to happen. Because of all these utilities, players, not just like that can change positions between the forward pack or between the backs, they've got half their forwards can play in the back line effectively. So they're so covered for anything bad.
I wonder whether there was some numbers that push them into making that decision.
Absolutely. There's no coincidence that they've gone heavy on utilities, and at the moment it's paying off, and I think it's only going to pay off more in the back end of the year when players do go down. It's inevitable.
Yeah, so I reckon surely Serraldo sat down, he's looked at, okay, this is the amount of injuries you have in a year, and because he's a very meticulous operator, Serraldo. Like, he's not just a willy-nilly, I feel this works or this doesn't work. There must have been some stats or numbers saying that the more players that can play multiple positions, the more wins you get, or something along those lines. Because it was a very methodical tactic they used. Like, they were getting shit all off-season for basically all you've signed is utilities. Now it looks like, what a brilliant move.
Here's some numbers for you. So in the first 2 weeks, remember they lost to the Eels, 26 points to 8. They lost to the Sharkies, 25 points to 6. And Matt Burton was sitting out on that left side, and we all sort of went, fuck, they need to get him more involved. There was even calls for him to play fullback. Even I found that appealing at the time because you just thought he's just not doing enough on that football side. And I would have thought for the Canterbury Bulldogs to be doing well, Matt Burton has to be absolutely braining it, right? The whole team's built around him. You look over the last 9 games of football, and this is nothing against Matt Burton. He's scored 3 tries. He's had 3 try assists, and he's had 4 line break assists. Across those 9 games, he's averaging 48 touches of the football. In those first 2 games, he averaged 52.
Yeah,
so they're not even doing it relying on solely Matt Burton. They are just a well-coached, good footy side all round.
They're just buying into the system.
They are just buying in. Everyone calling for Matt Burton having to do more. Like, when you look at those numbers, last 9 games, 3 tries is 4 line break assists. He's not absolutely flying. And they're winning games of football. They're in 5th, 6th place. It's crazy.
It's going to be exciting when he gets a roster. When this roster builds into and he starts plugging in with these young guns that are coming through, far out. Like, it's going to be super, super exciting to watch. Okay, into the game. I just got to shout it out. I know we speak about it a lot, but 6 minutes into the game, the Bulldogs are stuck in a corner. It's the second tackle. Guess who's there to take a one off the ruck hit up straight into the forwards? It's Critter. As a centre, he doesn't need to do that. He could. That is a winger's job. That is a winger's job or a fullback's job to come across, take the hit up. Critter, after an incredible Origin game, what was that, a 2-day turnaround?
Yep.
2-day turnaround, 6 minutes in, he's taken a one off the ruck hit up in his own corner. And that's leadership. That is leadership. You can talk as much as you want. You can try and G the boys up as much as you want. But actually going out there and taking the tough carries when your team needs it early in the game, that's a leader in Critter.
And I'm sure we've all seen it since, but obviously Stephen Crichton after the game, Hynes, I think he was getting heckled by fans or something and, went up the tunnel to put his arm around him. He is... You can't push anyone else's by the year for me. And when you look at Critter, what he's achieved in the age he's at and how much more footy he's got to go and the impact he's already had on Canterbury, this could be one of the great signings ever. It's got that sort of
club
potential.
Defining.
It could be club defining.
Yeah. Could be one of those, it could be similar to like what Lazarus used to do when he arrived at clubs. Again, we're ages away from that, but it could be that because it's such a key signing.
And if you have a look at the impact that Critter's had on this Canterbury club in the last 6 months, think about what he can have over the next few years. Like if he's the captain that brings Canterbury out of this drought and they win a premiership with him, he's already got 3 premierships under his belt. He's got some of the biggest moments in rugby league history already. Imagine if he captains the Canterbury Bulldogs.
And they were basically sitting last on the table when he arrived.
And people say hyperbolic, blah, blah, blah. Like, it will be one of the greatest signings of all time.
If he can, take a team from essentially, what did they finish, like 13th or 14th last year?
And have been a disaster for the last 5 or 6 years.
They haven't played finals footy since like 2014, 15 or something? 16?
15? No. Did they play after the 14 grand final?
I think Desi has it once he left.
That might have been it.
Yeah, they haven't played since.
Jeez. You had into it that they didn't have a captain at the start of the year. And West Sydney trying to work out who was going to be captain. For Tyler Marin had left. It wasn't going to be Marnie. A few different options. They didn't have one, and he's come in and done it.
They were 15th last year and 12th the year before.
So, he's rolled into a bottom of the table side. So, okay, in regards to Burton, his boot. Without Burton's boot, they get beaten. I honestly reckon by 2 tries at least. The amount of times the Sharks had field position just dominating him, and he would just boot them out of trouble. And they'd go again, get dominated, boot them out of trouble. Go again, because they're not the biggest pack and they're not the biggest side. Teams can get rolling on them, but he just goes, no, that extra 10 metres you just made, negated by my big boot. He literally kept them in the game with his boot.
Sorry, they haven't played finals since 2016, and they got the spoon in 2021.
Wow.
When you watch other teams in this competition that don't have a Mitch Moses or a Burton with a big boot, I personally I don't take as much notice of it, but when you see it, you're like, every team needs one of these guys.
It's great. Like the ability to turn a set around the way that a big boot does, it's you can honestly pay anything for.
And I'm sure you guys would have talked about it last Wednesday, but when Mitch Moses hit that first kick, I just went, oh God, we have needed this so badly.
Yep. I also liked how Bulldogs came out and targeted Katoa with kicks. And that's Katoa obviously on the Sharky side. He's just got some real concerns under the high ball in some big matches. So he's probably going to be targeted for the rest of the game. Now, the rest of the year and going forward, he'll have to work on that. But I just like the game plan of we've been told to target him. Let's just go at him. He didn't catch his first 2 bombs, I think, if I recall correctly. Really like that as he was also targeted by the Panthers as well.
Which sounds so easy. Kick to this guy, but it's about your entire team buying into that, putting yourself in the right positions to be able to target him. Mate, the guy that's sending out to me, and stats, I don't even know what they look like. I imagine they wouldn't be great, but this Bailey Hayward at 13, he is so smart. His timing and everything he does is incredible. You said at the start of the season, they had all these utilities and we're going, geez, that 13 jersey could go to anyone. He wasn't even mentioned. I think he looks great there.
Yeah, well, I remember watching him in one of the pre-season trials where I think they beat the Storm.
Yeah.
I think it was a Storm, and he looked great.
He killed it.
Yeah,
he just looked like a natural footballer.
Yeah.
Look at it as well, Sharkies were, to my knowledge, full strength. Doggies, no Josh Addo-Carr, no Kurt Mann, no Jacob Preston, a fair share of key outs. And then Sharkies, no Origin backups. Critter was back off 2 days.
And those 3 names you mentioned, when they're playing for Canterbury, they're some of their best. Kurt Mann's been unbelievable this year when he plays.
Yeah, absolutely. So great stuff from the Doggies. I thought their front row, just hung in there and just did a job. They don't get enough appreciation, and we always talk about on paper this, on paper that, but they're doing it. They're that front row is sitting 5th. If you had looked at that front row heading into this year, there's no way you would have said they're fit. And also that front row is going toe to toe with the best in the competition at times. It is him and Hughes, King and Hughes. I think that deserve massive raps for leading this team around.
I would love to pick the brains of the Doggies coaching staff and Ciraldo about just the nature of this pack. Smaller dynamic. We've spoken about it week in, week out over the last sort of month, 5 weeks. But just the way they've modelled it, was it always a plan to go with a smaller, more mobile pack? Was this the roster, as I said, that he's inherited and he just couldn't quite sign those big boppers? But it's been so effective, and I'd love to have a good chat to someone within the club and find out what the go was, because it's so effective.
And you have a look at Canterbury Bulldogs, like they missed twice as many tackles as the Cronulla Sharks, but at no point when I'm watching them do they not just have numbers everywhere.
Yeah.
Their scrambles just second to none.
Yeah.
I'll double check it. I think the Doggies have the most missed tackles in the NRL, but the second best defensive record behind Penrith.
It's similar to the way Wayne used to coach defence. Like, he was just all about scramble. He was just all about constantly competing. Like, whenever I was coaching him, I never really remember. Obviously, there would have been times, but I never really remember him blowing up about, if someone shot up out of the line, tried to shot someone and it didn't work. The only time he'd blow up is if you're trying to do a selfish play rather than something to help the team. The time he would blow up is when people weren't scrambling, and you see that with the Bulldogs. Like, they just. Their feet are always moving. And that's one key to good defence, is your feet are always moving.
And just to sum that up, mate, they are leading the competition in support runs.
There you go. They got a fit, fast, agile team that are committed to playing for every single minute of the 80 minutes.
37.7 missed tackles a game, number one in the NRL, and it just bites into, we speak about it all the time, not every missed tackle is the same.
Yeah. Absolutely.
That's remarkable, those two stats.
Yeah, and just if you can scramble for your mate beside you, then you can afford to miss tackles.
And just another small thing, the West Tigers, they've got the second most charge downs in the competition this year with 6. Canterbury have 10.
Hurry up.
You're right, they are just always moving.
Yeah.
Big Billy Kick out have 9 of them.
He'd have a stack.
Yeah. And so, what do we talk about the Penrith Panthers all the time? They're the fittest team in the comp. And so clearly Ciraldo has gone to the Bulldogs and said, you're going to be the fittest team in the comp and you're going to work all game. Never take a moment off.
Kick out genuinely does have 5.
Well,
He's a beast.
Yeah.
he is a beast. Okay, now on to the Sharkies. Anything else on the Doggies there?
No, mate.
On to the Sharkies. Obviously, the big talking point, look, the Rudolph penalty, it was a 50-50. It could have gone on either way. Me personally, I didn't think it was a penalty because I look at it and I go, he was tackling him as he kicked it. Yes, he held on to him for a second too long. He was never going to get there. So, look, it's a 50-50 for me. Like, I'm not too angry that it was called, but at the same time, I could have seen it being left as well. So I can't... Look, I understand if Sharkies fans, you're passionate about it and you get upset about it, but I don't think it's too an outrageous call, that one specifically. I will say, though, the Bulldogs got a lot of 50-50 calls in that last 10 minutes.
Yeah, 100%. And I agree with you on that one. It's a coin flip every time, realistically. But yeah, Canterbury did get a few calls go their way. I mean, you just need to look at this game and go, it was 3 tries to 2. Canterbury still found a way to win it.
Well, the thing I look at is that, yep, they did get those calls in the last 10 minutes, but Sharkies still had opportunities to win the game. Yeah. And that's the big talking point. The big talking point is obviously Hynes missing the field goal from in front. Look, Hynes, for sure, he should nail those. That's what he gets paid to do. I get all that. He's just in a tough period in his career right now. He's been in tough periods in his career before, but at least for the first year and a half or whatever, it's been the Nicho Hynes show. Everyone loves Hynes. It's been great. Now he's going through that natural period that every single footballer goes through, that, if you're not playing, if you're not icing those moments, because I've seen comments saying that he's never iced games. Like, no, he's iced plenty of games for the Sharkies. You just can't remember them. So it's not to suggest he can't do it, but that doesn't take away the fact that he should be doing it against the Doggies. He's just going through a period where it's going to be tough. He needs to ride it out and learn from it rather than allowing it to swallow him up and spit him out the other side in a worse player. Because not only is he having these moments like the sideline conversion and the drop kick that missed, but also fans, we have this kind of 2-year rule. Like, we love a player for 2 years, then when we realise that everyone loves them, we start looking for reasons to not like them. So it's a tough period for Hynes right now. He should ice those moments, but it's all about learning and building. There are plenty of players out there, some of the greatest of all time, that have missed game-winning situations, and he just needs to learn from it, in my opinion.
Isn't he just a great example of just how brutal the life of a halfback can be? Yeah. Like, he's in year 3. He's got a Dally M medal. His team's in 3rd. His team is entirely built around him. They're in 3rd place. Yes, he's missed a couple of key moments, no doubting that, but people are talking like he can't play.
Well, it's funny. So I got a message from a guy, and he was respectful, but he was basically talking like Hynes needs to go. And I said, I said to him, whenever you have that, and look, we're all guilty of it. We get caught up in the passion. We just lost a game we should have won. Blah blah. Whenever you're, and you can do this, you can take it or leave it. But whenever you're feeling like angry at a certain player or whatever, I always ask myself this question: if tomorrow you woke up and they said, "I don't want to be at this club anymore. I'm going to leave," how would you feel about that? And 2, how many clubs do you reckon would be interested in signing that bloke? If your answer to that is, I don't want him to leave, I don't want him to actually go, and also there'd be 16 other clubs that would take him in a second, then your answer is he's a bloody good player that just happened to miss a field goal.
Yeah, he just on the root off. I thought I leant towards that it probably was a penalty.
Yep.
I was certainly happy for it to be called. I mean, you can't praise the doggies the way we just did, and then be sort of too critical of the Sharks losing in Golden Point. Like, they scored 3 tries to 2 in it. They'll be ruining the missed opportunities. Yeah, it's a fascinating one, Nicho, isn't it? Because I agree with the sentiments of both you boys. Like, he's an NRL player. It is a long season. He's still, by comparison to other gun halves in the game, he's still early in his career, certainly in that position. He's in a form slump. He is. He looks like he's been a bit rattled by the Origin opening game.
It's definitely a tough period. This is a growing period for him
It
right
is
now.
what it is. Like, it's hard to sugarcoat the game on the weekend because he had numerous opportunities and he couldn't ice it.
I think he also kicked out on the... he had 7 tackles set, I think. Anyway.
I'm so confident that he'll bounce back in time and get back to gun form. Like, it's also only been a very small window of poor form. It was basically from the Panthers game into Origin and through. I look at him and I know, like, Kemp, you've had a little bit to do with him, and does he have the killer instinct and the arsehole about him where, like, I look at Mitch Moses and every time he plays, he's animated, he's passionate, he scores a try, and he's like, he just wants to win at all costs. I look at Nicho, and this is comparing him to the elites of the game. Does he have it in him, like the dog in him, that, you know, it's what makes you thrive at Origin level, and it's what makes you thrive in the key moments of games? Because at times I'm just like, he sounds like he's the world's nicest bloke. Does he have it in him?
I think he, not necessarily like what you would associate have the dog in him. I don't think he's aggressive like that, but he's hyper competitive.
That's probably what I was leaning to.
Yeah, he absolutely has hyper competition in him.
Yeah.
Like, he absolutely has that. He doesn't necessarily have the kind of spite dog in him that you can see in Moses sometimes.
Yes,
where
the
it's,
fuck you, I'll show you. Yeah.
Like, for example, I'd probably lean him more towards like a DCE competitor, whereas DCE doesn't have that spite dog in him to a degree. But DCE is like the ultra competes on everything.
Win at all costs.
At all costs, yeah.
Does Nicho Hynes have the same mindset?
I'm not sure. Look, put it this way: his mindset, it's not at DCE's level, but I think that you can. I think he has the ability to grow into that mindset. I think that
does, like, it's a natural. You've got it or you don't know. I don't know if it's a thing that you grow into that. Killing, like,
I don't think you get to his level when we win a Dally.
Yeah. And I think you're probably right. And that's why I'm just asking the question. But every professional athlete I've ever spoken to, they are just win at all costs. And the best of all time, I'm not saying Nicho Hynes has to be the bloody immortal, but you see them and they're just like, they would give anything to win anything that they do. I just don't know if I see that in Nicho.
I just think he expresses it in a different way to a lot of other people that we're used to. Go back and watch that Roosters game last year in the finals. You tell me that's not a player that's trying to win at all costs. I get the sentiment, though, that, like, you look at him and because he expresses it in a different way. Like, for example, he didn't nail the field goal, but he was still there to take it. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, he's still
he doesn't stop putting his hand up.
Yeah, he's putting his hand up.
Oh, he doesn't stop trying.
And also, we've you go back a couple of years, like, he has converted to win games. I'm pretty sure he's also dropped goals.
I got some examples.
Yep.
Against the Eels, it was 16-all. Kicked it, not from the sideline, but close enough to the sideline after the buzzer. He kicked a field goal against the Rabbitohs in Golden Point. So, like, he's been there before.
He's definitely done it.
Against the Cowboys in the Val game, he was the best player on the field. So I know he didn't kick the field goal that day, but he's ice games before, 100%.
Yeah, he's definitely done it before. I just agree with you in regards to Timmy. Like, he's in a form slump. He's in a tough time in his life right now. Craig Fitzgibbon also said it as well. He's just going through a tough time. He's 27 years old, turning 28, I'm pretty sure. He'll grow from this. It's just a tough time. It's not landing for him.
He just turned 28.
He just turned 28. Certain things are not landing for him, but this bloke's won a Dally M against some pretty bloody good players.
And I think, like, when we keep, the guys we keep talking about and comparing him to Mitch Moses, DCE, there was 4 and 5 year stretches where you couldn't back DCE and Moses to win shit.
No way.
You couldn't trust them in big moments for years, and people forget that now because they're at such a high level. But for years, you couldn't rely on these guys.
That was a knock on Mitchell Moses.
100%.
In big games, he would just go from side to side to side to side, and we actually saw it actually against the Knights to a degree. And we'd be going like, mate, just straighten the tack up. So I get what you're saying though, because he comes across as such a nice guy that can sometimes be confused with doesn't have the dog in him to get the job done. I think he does.
Just on Tim's point, I on the weekend, I was actually thinking a very similar thing. And when Reid Marnie went at him at halftime, I thought, fuck, I wonder if it's going to unlock. Surely Reid said something about Origin.
Yeah, of course.
Must have. And for me, I was like, fuck, it'll be interesting to see how Nicho, if he does come out. And, as much as Mitch Moses can go sideways and everything, you could see in that game, he wanted it. I thought Mitch Moses was up there the best player on the field.
Moses was incredible. That was more just a throwaway comment. Moses, it's been a couple of years now since you had to, pretty much since they made the grand final, really, where the question as to whether he can win big games or not, that's been put to bed years ago for Moses.
And once again, that's year 10 of being a halfback for Moses. Nicho, it's weird because he's come from Melbourne and he's older than the other guys, but he's still in year 3. You don't become a good halfback overnight.
In NRL. I know some people say, he played halves growing up. It's very different.
So different.
It's so different.
And he's really fascinating next month for him because, as I reckon he bounces back. I think he'll come good. It'll all be fine. But mentally, obviously battling on the footy field a little bit at the moment. Sharky's still playing good footy. They've got a really good draw coming up. Really fascinating to see where he's at in a month and how he responds to, because he's had his last 2 years have been not largely unblemished, but most things he's done touches have turned to goal.
Put it this way, the reality is, the facts of the matter are, and I agree, he didn't ice those 2 games, whatever. The fact of the matter is this: the team was 10th when he arrived. They came second in the first year that he was there. I think 5th or 6th the next year, and they're currently sitting 3rd. That's the fact of the matter. That's a bloody good resume for a bloke that was bought for, I think, about $600,000, and he was coming off the bench for the Storm, playing a bit of fullback and a bit of utility.
Once again, just shows the gravity of the 7 jersey. It is, you get all the rewards when your team's winning, but when they're not, it is on your head. Fair or unfair, it's just the way it is. 65%
win rate for Nicho at the Sharks.
Pretty bloody good for a 7. That's pretty bloody good. But I do think, in regards to your initial question, I do think he still needs to take a step up to be in the category of elite winner, like your DCEs, like your Mitchell Moses, like your Clearys. You know what I'm saying? So that, from that perspective, taking a step up into that top tier of winners, I think he just needs to ice a few more games to step into that, I think. I'd love to compare, how many games has Moses iced compared to Hynes in the last few years? It'd be interesting to see, because that was a big question about Moses for a long time in his career. Was you get to the key point in the game and it just didn't seem to work. He'd sometimes try too hard, whereas he's nailed it now.
And that's it. I'm judging purely on demeanour. His teammates might sit there and go, no, he could be the most competitive bloke in the team. I'm not sure. And he plays it in the sense that he never stops trying. He's in everything, but he's just got such a calm, laid-back demeanour, nice guy. Doesn't look it from the outset, but maybe he does. I don't know.
Yeah. No, I think he does. I think he does. But I agree with the sentiment of, to take that step into ultra winner, like your DCEs and that, he's still got some time to work into that, in my opinion. In regards to other performances, look, they still played relatively well. They had a lot of field position. They dominated the Bulldogs for a lot of it. They 3 tries to 2. Kicking game let them down. Matty Burton's boot kept him in the game. A few little things, I know Trindle ended up scoring that try in the corner, but they just have some players in their side where when they might be building pressure for 10 minutes, and they're building and they're building. And then just a silly error comes and you just go, shit. If you could just remove that one silly error, you'd be considered in the elite of the elite when it comes to teams going for a premiership. I just think this Sharky side, and maybe it's a matter of time and they can build into it, but it's just like, it's not necessarily the amount of errors they're making. It's just like when the moment comes, they'll just make a silly error and it'll just let down all the hard work they've done. There was a Trindle one. Sharkies working their ass off. They're getting field position back. And then he throws a forward pass. And that'd been 10 minutes of building pressure and it was gone. Now, I know Trindle came back and scored that try, which was great. But it was just an example of that, in my opinion, is the difference between the top tier sides and just a little bit below that the Sharks are. If they can sort that out, then hopefully they can go a bit further.
Mate, when we sat down a few weeks ago and picked our origin sides, I know Jesse Raymond was high up your list. I've been watching him really closely the last few weeks. Fuck, he's playing good footy.
Yeah, he's a bloody good
He's
player.
playing incredible footy at the moment, and that Sharks right edge, they are humming.
Yep, absolutely. Who else stood out for you?
Cameron McInnes in, I think we had him in our team of the week, 59 minutes, 20 runs for 170 metres. He had a try assist, 7 tackle breaks, 52 tackles with 1 miss. That is an unbelievable effort.
Yeah, he is just a dog. Talk about dogs. He's a dog.